For some people, when their partner doesn't text back right away, it's not a big deal. But if you've got relationship anxiety, it can feel like utter abandonment. Your chest tightens, your brain races, and you're already drafting your 8th message in a row and getting furious at them for making you feel this way. You might even get mad at yourself for being too clingy, but there's a really easy way to understand all of this, and it's all to do with the 10 rules of relationship anxiety. These are commandments that anxiety has duped you into believing are the only way to be in a relationship in order to feel safe and secure. The particular rule that I'm talking about in this video is what I call the law of constant contact. It's one of anxiety's most exhausting rules, and it skillfully turns connection from a source of joy into a desperate need. My name is Oliver, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here in Los Angeles, and this is my series of videos on relationship anxiety. I'm on a mission to help people understand the patterns in their anxiety, why it happens, and most importantly, how to break free from it to live healthy, happy, successful relationships that are free from anxiety. So what is the law of constant contact? Well, there's 2 things you need to know about anxiety. The first is that it's got a goal and a mission to keep you small, safe, and separate, which was an excellent evolutionary advantage to use when we were hunter-gatherers and were surviving predators, Viking armies, and velociraptors. Today, it's not so helpful, and that goal doesn't really align with our desire to be in close, connected, and intimate relationships. The second thing about anxiety is the rules it makes us follow are persistent, patterned, and predictable, which is why it's helpful to know what the rules of anxiety are and which ones you follow, because when you know the rules, then you can start to break them. So the law of constant contact is a trick that anxiety pulls on us, making us believe that our emotional stability and safety depends on knowing our partner is okay or if our relationship is stable. Ideally, it would love it if we could have a constant IV drip of reassurance. A text message or a call or an I love you every 15 minutes would be ideal. When this rule governs your relationship and you don't get that hit of contact, silence becomes really sinister. A delayed response transforms into evidence of abandonment. Physical distance feels like emotional rejection, and your world turns into this tsunami of panic. Anxiety is a really activating emotion, right? It makes us want to do something. That's the fight, flight, freeze thing. So you might be stirred up by anxiety's whisper to send multiple text messages, to call and call again until they answer, or to get them somehow to tell you that they love you and everything's okay. Not because you want to control them, but because you're desperately trying to control your own feelings and soothe your own anxiety. If this sounds at all familiar and you want more help identifying the 10 rules of anxiety and tips to grow a healthier, happier relationship, you can either take my 10 rules of relationship anxiety quiz, or you can sign up for my newsletter. I'll put the links everywhere. I've been doing this for 10 years and I love sharing the insights, tools that I've seen work in my private practice with all of you. So at the heart of this law of anxiety lies a fundamental intolerance of uncertainty. When we can't be 100% certain our partner is okay, or we can't be 100% certain that they love us, we get anxious. If we're afraid we're going to get abandoned, it's because we're uncertain if they're going to leave. If we get in a fight, that will cause anxiety because we're uncertain of whether we can patch things up and repair it. So most often, this fear of uncertainty starts in childhood, which is where all of this attachment theory stuff comes from. John Bowlby and Mary Ames suggested that our earliest attachments to our caregivers shape our expectations of love. So if comfort and love from a caregiver was inconsistent or unpredictable as a child, we become wired to expect it again as an adult and get anxious about what's going to happen. In our adult relationships, anything can trigger those old blueprints that were installed back then. Fight, a silence, a change in our partner's mood, all generate the same anxiety. And the logical way to soothe that anxiety is to seek confirmation that things are okay. Do you love me? Are we okay? Are you going to break up with me? To get some certainty. So if you get a promising or reassuring answer or response to each question, you get a flicker of relief. But before you know it, something else is going to trigger that blueprint and the cycle starts over again. What we know about anxiety disorders is that at the core of most of them, they are disorders of uncertainty. So when you have this intolerance to uncertainty, your brain literally cannot close the certainty center loop. Anxiety tells us to keep searching, scanning, seek proof that everything is okay, and you must have 100% certainty, and there can be zero possibility of abandonment or somebody leaving you. The law of constant contact is fueled by this desperate search for 100% certainty. And if you think about it rationally, all relationships are 100% uncertain. There is no guarantee you will live in that Disney fairy tale and live happily ever after. But none of that matters to anxiety, which insists that you ignore the reality that life is uncertain and you should demand certainty all of the time. Now, the problem is that any reassurance your partner can give you has a half-life of just minutes or hours, sometimes days. But it's like any drug you take, including coffee or nicotine or Advil. Each hit of reassurance provides temporary relief, but it wears off. And it could leave you needing more and more sooner and more in higher doses. You might get your partner to say, I love you at 10 o'clock in the morning, but by noon, you might need another hit of assurance, so you might call again. And by the time work ends, you just have to swing by their house just to see them or FaceTime them before bed just to get one more hit before you go to sleep. But where does this go? If you play this forward, we're really saying you need to be with them all of the time. But even if they're with you and you're next to them 24/7 and somehow didn't need a job, I bet your anxiety will still find a way to demand more certainty. You're trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No amount of reassurance will ever be enough because the problem isn't a lack of love, it's the inability to tolerate not knowing with absolute certainty. So your partner becomes your coping strategy, like a tool of emotional regulation, a drug, your human EpiPen. But the more we outsource our calmness to another person, the less able we are to soothe ourselves. Your partner's reassurance is like having ice cream when you've got a sore throat. Feels really good, but it's not medicine. It's not doing anything to treat the infection. It's a Band-Aid. So in my clinical experience, what I see is that the more we rely on these external crutches, whether it's a partner or medication or constant checking, we're actually reinforcing the belief that we don't have the resources to cope by ourselves. So every time you text your partner for reassurance, instead of soothing yourself, your anxiety says, see, it worked, you feel better. We should do this more often. So your partner becomes your anxiety medication and now you're addicted to them. But like any dependency, it weakens your own capacity while putting impossible pressure on that relationship. And this is the impact that this rule has on your relationship. So the consequences can be devastating. For your partner, the pressure grows suffocating. So at first, they're going to be happy to reassure you that everything's okay. They might delight in it, actually. But eventually, they see that no amount of reassurance will ever help. And managing your anxiety becomes a burden. And then they withdraw. They become irritable or they shut down. And that tragically confirms your belief and your deepest fear that abandonment is going to happen. So what makes this pattern so destructive is how it creates the very outcome we're trying to prevent. Your partner starts feeling like they can never give you enough. Every reassurance is met with another anxious question. Every gesture of love seems insufficient and it's too much. They might even begin to experience caregiver fatigue. They love you, but they're exhausted by having to constantly prove it. They want to comfort you, but they're frustrated that their comfort never seems to do anything. Eventually, even the most patient partner starts to pull back, not because they've stopped loving you, but because they need space to breathe and they didn't sign up for this burden. So how do we break free from the law of constant contact? Well, the answer isn't to stop caring, become emotionally distant. It's to actually increase your tolerance to the distress of uncertainty. As we've said, you can't ever be 100% certain in life, right? Even if you get married, divorces happen. Even if you move in, affairs happen. There's nothing certain about relationship. So first we need to recognize when anxiety is running the script. When you feel that urgent need to text, pause and listen to what anxiety is saying and see if you can push back on it, even for a few minutes. So if you put off sending the third message in a row, just while you go make yourself a cup of tea, that would be a win because you're not immediately doing what anxiety tells you to do. So starting small, waiting an extra 5 minutes, half an hour before checking your phone. Sit with that discomfort of not knowing what your partner is doing for longer periods of time. These might seem really silly steps, but you're literally rewiring your nervous system to tolerate this horrible feeling of uncertainty. And third, you've got to develop your self-soothing toolkit. When anxiety rises, instead of reaching for your phone to soothe it, try breathing, journaling, calling a friend. You're not abandoning your partner or your relationship, you're learning to soothe your own feelings in ways other than reaching out to your partner. The easy fix is their response, but the easy option is not always the best solution. So remind yourself of the burden you might be placing on them. Here's what I've learned after years of working with relationship anxiety. The more desperately you grasp for certainty, the more it slips through your fingers. If a butterfly lands on your hand, you have to let it be, because there isn't much of a butterfly left if you grab it tightly and put it in your pocket. Our partners need to feel free to come closer because they're choosing to, not because they're obligated to ease our anxiety. And time apart, ideally, can become an opportunity for missing each other rather than a trigger for panic. So think about it. And if you want more help with this and relationship anxiety, I've got tons of tips, tools, and tricks and ideas and suggestions that I share with couples in my private practice that I'm now sharing with all of you. So sign up, hit subscribe, take the quiz, sign up for the newsletter, do all of the things